Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. That was the impression many viewers were left with after Denzel Washington made an unexpected exit from Stephen Colbert's late-night show. An interview that was supposed to be a routine stop on his press tour but instead turned into one of the most talked-about moments in television. The atmosphere at the Ed Sullivan Theater that evening was buzzing as usual. Fans came expecting light banter, a few jokes, and a glimpse of Hollywood glamour. Washington had arrived to promote his latest directorial project, a heartfelt drama exploring redemption and second chances. Early reviews had already called it a contender for awards season, and his team saw the show as an important opportunity to highlight the film's message. But behind the curtain, things were not as calm. Insiders later revealed that Colbert's writers had prepared unusually sharp questions. Their target? Washington's openly Christian worldview and his cautious approach to polarizing social debates. Colbert, confident that his audience shared his political leanings, reportedly wanted to push Washington beyond the safe territory of film promotion. The interview began smoothly enough. Washington, with his usual calm presence, charmed the crowd as he joked about the discipline required on set and the intensity of his roles. But the tone shifted when Colbert steered the conversation toward faith. "This film is about forgiveness," Colbert noted, leaning back with an inquisitive smile. "How did your personal beliefs influence the way you told this story?" Washington answered with quiet conviction. He explained that faith gave him a lens to understand forgiveness, not as perfection, but as the effort to return to one's true self after failure. His sincerity drew a warm hush from the audience. Yet Colbert wasn't satisfied. He pressed harder. "Isn't it ironic? You're a man of faith in an industry built on illusion. Do actors really have the right to claim moral ground?" The mood in the room shifted. Washington's expression remained composed, but the tension was palpable. His publicist, standing just off stage, could already sense the danger and where the exchange was heading. Washington replied firmly but respectfully. Authenticity mattered, he said. He wasn't preaching, but neither would he conceal his beliefs. People could take from his words what they wished and leave the rest. Colbert doubled down, moving into even more charged territory. He questioned Washington's decision to stay silent on divisive social issues, marriage equality, reproductive rights, religion and politics, suggesting that the actor wanted the influence of a moral voice without the burden of taking sides. At that moment, the energy in the theater froze. What had started as entertainment now felt like a confrontation. Washington did not flinch. His silence, followed by measured words, carried more weight than any fiery retort. "Is this about my film or about scoring a viral clip?" With that pointed question, Denzel Washington broke the rhythm of the interview, and the audience knew they were no longer watching late-night entertainment. They were witnessing a clash. Though his jaw had tightened, Washington's voice stayed calm. He explained that his faith, for him, wasn't about condemnation but compassion, living with dignity, working hard, caring for family, and respecting others even when they disagreed. "I'm not running for office," he reminded Colbert. "I've never claimed to have all the answers." But instead of easing the tension, Washington's composure seemed to provoke the host further. Colbert pressed him on his church attendance, suggesting that silence on issues like marriage equality and abortion was still a political statement. That's when Washington's tone shifted. His friendly demeanor gave way to something more guarded, his eyes narrowing as he asked, "Is this about my film, or are you just trying to corner me?" A nervous ripple of laughter ran through the crowd. Some weren't sure if this was still an interview or a standoff. Colbert, however, leaned into the confrontation, framing it as a matter of accountability. He praised Washington's talent but argued that public figures who talk about values have a responsibility to clarify where they stand on the great moral debates of the day. Washington pushed back. "Whose issues?" he asked, his voice firm. "Yours, your audience's, or the millions of people who just want to see a film that gives them hope?" The exchange struck a nerve. Colbert countered with urgency, saying democracy was under siege, women's rights were being rolled back, and LGBTQ+ communities were facing new threats. In such a climate, silence from influential voices, he argued, wasn't neutrality. It was complicity. By now, the studio was thick with tension. Washington's publicist edged closer to the stage, phone in hand, while producers exchanged worried looks in the control booth. For the first time, Washington's voice rose, edged with frustration. I've never claimed moral authority. I talk about my life, about what's helped me through hardship. I make films that matter, but now I'm being shoved into a political box so you can score points with your audience. Colbert pressed harder, his tone sharper than before. You talk about values, but when it comes to the real moral questions of our time, you stay silent. What kind of message does that send? Washington leaned forward, his voice calm but cutting. The message is that maybe a person's relationship with God, their sense of right and wrong, doesn't need to fit your political checklist. Maybe respecting people means not turning them into sound bites. Maybe dignity matters more than towing the party line on a late-night stage. The response split the room. Some erupted in applause while others sat frozen, unsure how to react. Colbert flushed, rattled, and shot back. So you're saying neutrality on civil rights is respectful? That's when Washington stood. For the first time, his frustration was visible. What I'm saying, he fired back, is that bringing a guest on under false pretenses, ambushing them with political traps, and then scolding them for not playing along, that's not respect. That's manipulation. The audience gasped. The illusion of a promotional interview had shattered. What should have been a routine late-night chat had escalated into something far more charged. A raw showdown over belief, influence, and the rules of televised debate. Colbert, unwilling to surrender the moment, leaned forward with irritation. Sit down, Denzel. We're having a dialogue here. This is exactly the kind of evasion I'm calling out, he said sharply. You're dodging the real questions by making it about me. Washington, however, remained on his feet. His tall frame loomed over the desk, shifting the balance of power in the room. Suddenly, Colbert no longer looked like the master of ceremonies, but rather a host struggling to hold on to control. Here's the real problem, Washington replied evenly. I was booked to talk about a film. That's what your producers told my team. Instead, you've set me up for a political ambush so you can turn this into a spectacle. Colbert smirked, adopting a patronizing tone. Come on, you're one of the most recognizable actors in the world. You can handle difficult questions, unless your faith only functions in friendly spaces. The jab stung, but Washington's expression hardened instead of breaking. His words were deliberate, almost hushed. You want to discuss my faith? My faith tells me to forgive, Stephen. It also tells me not to waste truth on those who would only trample it. The line struck like lightning. Gasps erupted across the theater. Some clapped nervously, others froze in disbelief. Colbert's face drained of its usual polish, his voice trembling. Did you just call me a swine on my own program? Washington didn't raise his tone. I'm telling you what I see. You sit behind a desk and try to tear down another man for laughs. What should I call that? Backstage, the control room dissolved into chaos. Producers signaled to cut to commercial, but Colbert waved them off, determined not to retreat. That's called journalism, he snapped. It's accountability. You act like a moral guide in your films, yet you won't take a stand on issues that affect real people. That's not conviction. It's cowardice pretending to be wisdom. The word cowardice poisoned the air. Washington leaned closer, towering above the host. His stare was unwavering. Cowardice? Let me tell you what that looks like. It's hiding behind comedy while launching attacks. It's luring a guest onto your show under false pretenses and blindsiding them in front of millions. That's cowardice. And that's exactly what you're doing right now. The audience shifted uncomfortably, divided between applause and stunned silence. Colbert rose from his chair, desperate to reassert authority. I'm not hiding, he snapped. I'm asking direct questions. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't agree to interviews. Washington's voice dropped again, calm but cutting. Maybe you're right. Maybe I should only sit down with people who understand the difference between an honest conversation and a trap. Colbert's composure unraveled. His voice climbed as anger seeped through. Professionalism, Denzel. Dodging questions while preaching values isn't professional. Hiding behind religion isn't professional. Washington answered without hesitation. Professionalism is treating your guests with respect. It's honoring the promises your producers made about why I'm here. What you're doing tonight isn't journalism. It's theater designed to humiliate. A hit piece dressed up as late-night comedy. The words cut deep. Colbert's face twitched, stripped of his carefully constructed persona. His reply came out harsh and exposed. A hit piece? You chose to walk onto this stage. No one dragged you here. The theater crackled with energy, half outrage, half disbelief. What was left of the interview had collapsed into open confrontation. Colbert's patience finally snapped. If you can't deal with serious questions, maybe stick to fluff interviews on gossip shows, he sneered. The disdain in his tone cut through the air. Washington stepped back, not retreating, but recoiling in disgust. His eyes hardened. Serious questions? That's what you call this circus? You've spent the entire segment trying to trap me in sound bites that have nothing to do with the reason I came here. You've gone after my faith, my integrity, and my character, all under the disguise of tough journalism. The host's voice cracked with anger. I'm being transparent, Colbert insisted. I'm holding you accountable. You've built a brand as a moral guide in Hollywood, yet you refuse to pay the cost of that image. You want to be praised without facing the fallout. The theater was silent. Every eye was fixed on the stage. Some audience members looked confused, others uneasy, and a few seemed captivated by the sheer drama unfolding. Washington glanced at the crowd, then back at Colbert with something closer to pity than fury. You're right about one thing, Stephen. I do want respect, Washington said evenly. But here's the difference. I try to earn it through my craft, through how I treat people, through the example I set. You try to claim it by cutting people down. Colbert's composure was gone. His reply shook with frustration. Don't talk to me about respect. You've been looking down your nose at me from the second you sat here acting superior, as if you're too good to answer what matters. Washington shook his head slowly. The only thing I'm above is this charade, this setup. I arrived to discuss a film I poured myself into, and you've turned it into a sideshow. Colbert raised his voice, nearly shouting. This is what accountability looks like. This is what happens when people try to straddle the fence. You can't play moral sage in your movies and then run away from the issues that affect real people. Washington's expression tightened, his tone steady but heavy. A moral leader? He repeated. I've never claimed to be anyone's leader. I'm an actor, a filmmaker, a man of faith. That's it. But to you, that's not enough. You'd rather cast me as either your mascot or your villain. The tension had reached its limit. Sensing the moment slipping away, Colbert made one last attempt to assert control. Fine, walk out, prove me right. Show everyone how you react when you're finally pressed with real questions. Go back to safe interviews where nobody challenges you. Washington placed a hand on the back of his chair. For a second, it seemed he might lash out with the same heat Colbert had been throwing all night. Instead, he adjusted his jacket, straightened his cuffs, and faced the camera. His voice was calm, measured, final. You know what? You're right, Stephen. I am going to walk away. Not because I can't handle hard questions, but because I value myself too much to stay part of this performance. The audience sat frozen. The cameras rolled on, capturing the unscripted moment. Washington turned directly to viewers at home. For those who tuned in hoping to hear about a film on forgiveness and redemption, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to watch this instead. The film opens Friday. Judge it for yourselves. Colbert panicked, tried to claw back control. Oh, so now you'll plug your movie after calling me a pig? Washington's glare could have burned through glass. I'll do what professionals do, Stephen. I'll honor the work of the hundreds who poured themselves into this film, even if you couldn't honor your word to keep this interview respectful. The theater held its breath. The clash had reached its breaking point. Colbert's control was slipping fast. His voice wavered, sharp with anger. Respectful? Is that what you call this? You've been smug and self-righteous from the beginning, acting too pure for politics while the rest of us deal with reality. For the first time, Washington's composure cracked. His voice rose with intensity. Reality? Let me tell you about reality. I grew up with nothing in Mount Vernon. I learned early that a man's promise is sacred. I learned that people can disagree without tearing each other apart in front of millions. That's the real world, Stephen. This He gestured toward the cameras and audience. This is your world, a staged arena where humiliation is disguised as bravery. The air grew suffocating. No one in the audience knew whether to clap, gasp, or stay silent. They only knew they were witnessing something no late-night show had ever dared to show them. Colbert, sensing the room slipping through his fingers, lashed out one last time. Fine, leave, but don't expect to come back when you need publicity. And don't kid yourself, this doesn't make you a hero. Washington froze mid-step, turned back slowly, and fixed Colbert with a piercing stare. His words landed like a hammer. A hero? Stephen, I'm not trying to be a hero. I'm trying to be a man. Maybe you should try it sometime. The insult shattered what little composure Colbert had left. His face twisted with rage. Get out! Get out of my studio! Security! He screamed. But Washington was already walking away, calm and steady, each step deliberate. His dignity remained intact. No stumble, no hesitation, just a man leaving on his own terms. At the edge of the stage, he turned one last time, but not toward the host. His gaze swept across the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't what I came here for. I came to share something meaningful, something I'm proud of. Instead, you saw what happens when television forgets its duty to treat people with respect. Colbert, trembling and red-faced, tried to salvage control. Don't you lecture my audience, he barked. They came for honesty, not your sanctimony. Washington cut him off, his voice clear and final. They came for entertainment, Stephen, and instead they watched you tear down a guest for sport. I hope it was worth it. With that, he walked off stage. The studio was left in stunned silence. Colbert stood frozen at his desk, surrounded by wreckage of his own making. There was no applause, only a heavy, echoing stillness. Producers flailed in the control booth, signaling wildly, but the host seemed dazed, staring blankly into the lights. At last, after an unbearable pause, Colbert turned to the camera, his voice flat. Well, that was unexpected. We'll be back after the break with our musical guest. The audience didn't laugh. As the show cut to commercial, something remarkable happened. People began filing out. Some had waited months for seats. Others had traveled from far away. But what they had witnessed wasn't comedy. It was raw, uncomfortable, and bitter, and many had seen enough. Backstage, Washington's team was already in motion, gathering coats and answering a flood of calls from reporters. His longtime agent met him at the curtain, her face tight with worry. Denzel, I'm so sorry. We had no idea he was planning this. Washington slipped on his coat with calm precision. It's not your fault, he said, his voice steady. When the cameras are on, some people finally show you who they really are. He paused, letting the weight of that truth settle. Tonight we witnessed a turning point for Stephen Colbert. Backstage, Colbert was a man undone. His voice cracked with frustration as he snapped at his team. How did this happen? How did he flip this on me? I couldn't even get him to answer the basic questions. His executive producer, an industry veteran, remained unshaken. Stephen, he said bluntly, I've been in this business for 3 decades, and I've never seen anything like this. You didn't just lose control, you provoked him, and he left with every ounce of dignity, while you lost it completely. Colbert, still seething, shook his head. I didn't lose control. He walked out because I asked him the tough questions. The producer sighed, frustration creeping into his voice. You didn't just ask tough questions. You relentlessly attacked his faith for 15 minutes. That's not just losing control. That's going to cause a media storm. Back on the air, Colbert struggled to recover. His usual wit fell flat as he muddled through his monologue. His attempts at light-hearted banter with the musical guest felt forced and disconnected. The audience sat in uncomfortable silence, the vibrant energy of late-night entertainment gone. Meanwhile, online, the firestorm had already begun. Clips from the interview flooded social media, rapidly gaining traction. By the time the show had finished, Denzel Walks Out was trending worldwide. Millions had watched the tension-filled exchange, and millions more chimed in with their thoughts. The next morning, the consequences were unavoidable. Ratings tanked, advertisers began pulling their spots. Meanwhile, think pieces questioning Colbert's conduct filled major outlets, all pondering the same central question. Had he finally gone too far? Washington, for his part, stayed above the fray. When the press reached out, he gave a measured response. "I wish Mr. Colbert well, and I hope he learned something from this. As for me, I'm focused on my work and the people who support it. The work speaks for itself." And indeed, Washington's film Open Strong spoke volumes. It opened to both critical acclaim and strong box office numbers. Some critics even pointed out the bittersweet irony: a film about grace and redemption, almost overshadowed by a host who displayed neither. For Colbert, however, the aftermath was brutal. Ratings continued their downward spiral. His trust with the public evaporated. In television circles, the question on everyone's mind was whether he could survive the fallout. In the end, this moment wasn't just another viral incident. It was a raw moral clash on national television. One man stood with quiet integrity, refusing to play the game, while the other crumbled beneath the weight of his own ego. And in that contrast, viewers saw something that would stay with them. They saw the difference between authenticity and showmanship, between principles and theatrics, and between a man who walked away with his head held high and one who was left screaming into the silence of his own ruined stage.